Hey everyone, welcome. I have popped in here just a few minutes early as I am going to deal with some new technology. I'm using StreamYard. That's a new thing for me. So we will see how this goes, but I thought I would go ahead and get in here and get started. Apparently, if you want to leave a comment with StreamYard, you just need to give them permission for whatever they need to do so I can see who you are in the comment section. But we will get started right here in 2 minutes at the top of the hour. And I promise the PowerPoint presentation will be larger. I know it's very small and hard to read right now, but I will do my best to make it larger and minimize me, and then you can see that. So tonight we're going to talk about setting up systems for success with our writing systems. And so I have a number of tips and tricks that I hope will be helpful. At the end, I'm going to be talking about my new novel blueprint course, which will incorporate those and of course go far beyond that. Stay to the end. There's some bonuses that are available only for the next 24 hours. So I wanted to make you aware of that in case you have to pop out. You can make sure that you come back and check those. So we will get started here in just a minute. Thank you, Richard. So appreciate your support. It's always nice to have people here that are cheering for you. So we've got just about a minute left, but I always figure it's better to be in a little bit early and make sure that the technology works. So it actually did throw me for a loop earlier. It wouldn't let me use my preferred slideshow method. So we're using Google Slides and we will see how that turns out. Hopefully it will turn out well. All right, it is the top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming. This is Systems for Success. It's setting up writing systems that will help you make the best progress whenever you sit down to write and make writing less difficult with less friction and move you into more effective writing. So let's see if I can make some things move around here so I can see everything properly. Looks like I can. All right, good deal. I'm going to move this. I'm going to move a few things around here so I can see what's going on. We shall see how this turns out. All right, I'm going to make myself smaller and make the slides bigger. And hopefully that will make them a little more visible. We'll do the best we can. For those of you who don't know, I am Jennifer Crosswhite. I write Christian romantic suspense and Christian historical romance. I also am a book coach and editor. I have published my 16th book this year, and I worked in traditional publishing for many years. So I'm taking all of that knowledge and bringing it to you for the people that want to learn how to navigate the whole writing and publishing world. Okay. Let's see. Oh, good. The slides advanced. Always happy when that's working. I'll show this again at the end, and you'll see there's a banner running across the bottom of the screen. But if you go to that link, tandemservicesinc.com/jumpstart, you could get this free ebook, Jumpstart Your Writing Today, Short Bites to Improve Your Writing. They'll also get you onto my updates list, and you can learn more about my membership group and classes. But I will specifically be talking about the novel blueprint course towards the end. And I can see comments, which is fantastic. And I will have a little bit of time at the end to answer some of those. So if there are questions on this as we go along, let me know, and I'll make sure to answer some of those at the end. Okay. Yay, I'm so happy when this works. Let's talk about setting ourselves up for success with writing. So much of what we do in life, but particularly in writing or other creative endeavors, is a head game. And that's why we end up living something like 80 or 90% of our lives on autopilot. We don't truly examine what we do and why we do it, and if it's even serving us. So self-examination can really be a hard skill to master. It's hard to analyze yourself. And that's why Socrates says to know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. And to know how you're wired as a writer is the beginning of success as a writer. So what we want versus what we actually do, those are two different things. We may want to write a book, but at the end of another year, we have discovered we haven't made much progress. One way that is helpful in motivating you to achieve your goals is to think about the kind of person you are or the kind of person you want to be when you achieve that goal. There's some really interesting brain science behind all of this, which I am not an expert at, but I like to cherry pick the things that I think will be helpful. And one is there's something called cognitive dissonance. And that is the difference between what the mind believes and the evidence in the real world. And the brain does not like when there's a gap between those two things. It wants them to be in alignment. And so it will jump through all sorts of hoops to make that happen. You see this sometimes when people try to justify why they did something. They'll say, well, they made me do it. If they hadn't done X, I would not have had to do Y. And that's because they don't view themselves as the type of person who does Y. But they clearly just did Y. So they have to have some sort of justification for that. So you can take that and use it in a positive way. As you think about your biggest obstacles to writing, you can rephrase them to the kind of identity that you want to aspire to. So you could say, I want to be the kind of writer that writes for 30 minutes every morning while I'm drinking my coffee. Or I want to be the kind of writer who isn't afraid of making mistakes and just keeps on writing without editing. Or I want to be the kind of writer who doesn't second guess myself. So whatever your obstacles are, turn that upside down and make it part of your identity. When you give yourself that aspirational identity, your brain will try to reconcile that with your behavior. You'll have a powerful tool in your arsenal, and you won't have to rely on willpower, which is shaky at best. You may not be completely aware of your own limiting beliefs about your identity, but as you encourage yourself to think about that, you'll become more aware of those things that are tripping you up. So when people ask about our identity, we usually tell them what we do. It's one of the first questions you ask when you meet somebody. Well, what do you do? But pay attention to that. Use that. Start calling yourself a writer. So look at your calendar. How you spend your time is reflective of your character and your priorities. Does your calendar reflect that you're a writer? That's kind of an interesting question, isn't it? All right. So you can start by saying, I'm the kind of person who, fill in the blank. It's one thing to say I'm the type of person who wants to be a writer or to write a book. It's another thing to say, I am a writer. I am the type of person who writes books. It's a subtle but difference between wanting something and identifying as it. So to truly change your behavior, you must first change your identity. The behavior must become part of who you are. Here's a great example. I love this example. Many of you have probably heard of the great runner, Roger Bannister. He broke the 4-minute mile in 1954, something many people believed was physically impossible for humans to do. They thought maybe your heart would explode. So when you hear the story, you probably think he spent a lot of time training and optimizing his food and sleep schedule and doing all sorts of things to get himself in optimal condition to break this amazing barrier. But you would be wrong. Bannister was a med student and only an amateur runner. He had to work his training in and around his schedule as a med student, and that's not an easy feat. If you ever watch the TV show ER, you know how medical life is. As he once said, I trained for less than 3/4 of an hour, maybe 5 days a week. I didn't have time to do more. And so when I read that, I just had to let that sink in for a minute. It blew me away when I first heard it. The guy who broke the 4-minute mile trained less than I write each week. So here's the good news. You don't need to dedicate your life or drop everything to write a book. You can do great things in small increments of time. So in about 2 years, running 4 hours a week, Roger Bannister reached his goal of breaking the 4-minute mile. I believe it started with his identity in believing it was possible and that he could do it. Then he developed a process, and not a very rigorous one, and then he achieved his outcome. So if you wrote 45 minutes a day or about 4 hours a week, what could you get accomplished in 2 years? So if we did some math and we said, okay, you're going to write 500 words during that hour-long writing session, that would be 2,000 words a week, 8,000 words a month, 104,000 words a year. And that's a book. That's more than a book. So I highly recommend James Clear's Atomic Habits if you want to do a deeper dive on this. His point is small changes are powerful, and I heartily agree with him on that. So the question is, if it's just small incremental changes, why don't we do this more often? And again, back to the brain science. It's a pain versus pleasure principle. The brain has two main goals in life, to survive and to thrive. And to do most of that, it means it needs to avoid pain even more than it wants to seek after pleasure. So how many of you have ever found writing painful? I will say I have found it painful. Going into a writing session, our brain is biased to look for dopamine hits from distractions or anything else that will keep us from the hard work of writing. Not writing isn't painful, right? Writing is painful, not writing isn't painful. And so we are wired to avoid it. So we have to ask the question, how can we make writing less painful and not writing more painful, right? So if we don't write, there should be some pain associated with that. How do we do that? So some of that we will address with that identity and that cognitive dissonance. If we are writers, if that is our identity and we are not writing, then there should be cognitive dissonance there. The brain doesn't like it and it will make us uncomfortable. And so that's why we started with that subject. But I want you to think about the flip side. What's it costing you not to write? Is it really true that not writing isn't painful? So if you ask yourself some of these questions, yes, in the moment, it might be less painful to not write. But over time, what is going to be more painful? So what does your lack of consistent writing cost you? What will it cost you in the future if it's not going to be fixed? And if writing consistently suddenly became easy, what would it mean for you, for the people you love? What would it mean for your reputation and legacy? What would you gain? So be thinking about that. Maybe take some notes on that. Jot that down. Think about it over the next few days. So we want to talk about these internal systems before we get into the technical writing habits, because these internal workings of our brain are the things that are going to lay the foundation for anything external we do. The external stuff will not work unless the internal foundation is set. So we will start talking about some of those external things. But spend some time thinking about some of these internal brain things that we've talked about and see how you might be able to change some of that to make your writing more effective and your identity as a writer more powerful. So something that is really powerful is using the power of our senses. This is a bit of a bridge because our senses are very much tied to our brains and to instinctive behaviors. So as we start talking about external behaviors that can make our writing time more productive, it makes sense to start with the 5 senses. So when we do want to sit down to write, we want it to be as productive as possible. We want the words to flow. We want to not be distracted. So we can harness the power of our senses to do that. Not everyone has a dedicated place to write, and that's fine. What you simply need to do is create cues to tell your brain this is writing time. It's not Facebook time, it's not email time, but this is writing time. And we can do that by cueing in on the 5 senses. So we think about what are some distinctive things we can do that we only do when we sit down to write. Smell is one of those. I used to burn a different scented candle with each book. And the scent, I would try to pick a candle out that would coordinate with the theme of the book. So I would know that it was time to write. And that's very powerful on the subconscious. But now my cats would probably knock over the candle and burn the house down. So I decided to use a diffuser instead. But you could use essential oils, you could use perfume, you could use scented lotion, you could use anything that reminds your brain this is time to write. Taste is another thing that is very tied to our subconscious. That sounds a little weird, but you could have a certain mint or a certain gum that you only use when you're writing. Mint actually wakes you up and makes you more alert, so that's a good choice. But even if you only have like a certain snack that you only have around writing, that can be a great way to tell yourself this is time to write. Hearing. What do you like to listen to while you write? And people can be very divided on this subject. Some people need absolute silence. Some people like a little background noise. Some people like certain music. If you like music, you could make a Spotify or a Pandora playlist that you only listen to when writing, that's maybe encouraging or ties into the theme of your book, whatever works for you, but you only listen to it while you're writing. I personally like nature sounds like the ocean or the mountains. That helps me feel like I'm in the setting of my book. But if you like background noise like a coffee shop, there's this fun little site called Coffivity. Let's see, do I have it on here? I do have it on here. So COFFITIVITY, coffivity.com. You can choose cafes from all over the world. So if you like to pretend that you're writing in a Parisian cafe, you could choose that. And it's funny, they all sound a little bit different. So that's kind of a fun thing to explore. And if you like silence, then invest in some good headphones or some good noise canceling earbuds, whatever it might be, or a white noise machine or a fan, whatever will block out those extraneous noises that could distract you. Especially if it's just a little fan that you can take with you wherever you go, that can work really well. So vision, seeing, what are you looking at when you write? Scrivener has a composition mode that blocks everything out on your screen. It blocks out your menu bar, so literally you just get the page that you're writing on. Some people like to create vision boards. You could do it the old-fashioned way on foam core, or you could do it on Pinterest, or you could do it in any number of ways and just have it as the background on your computer. Maybe you pull it up every time you start writing. Whatever it is, there's a lot of options there. You could have, if you do have a dedicated work area, you could have something like a little figurine or a fidget thing or something that reminds you. I have a domino that says, write those books. And it reminds me that the writing is the first step of the domino, right? The domino effect. And if I can't have the rest of it if I don't write the book first. So any of that that will inspire you and keep you going is a great thing to have in your visual site. And touch. This might also seem strange because we're touching our keyboards, we're touching our mice, but I used to keep a bowl of sea glass nearby when I was thinking. There's something about having something to fiddle with for a lot of people. It could be a fidget device, it could be silly putty, it could be a stress ball or a stone, but something that you only touch during the time you're thinking about writing and you're writing. Okay, so now that we have all these ideas for setting up our ideal space, let's talk about the actual habit of writing. As we talked about earlier with identity, if you are a writer, you write. So we want to reinforce that by writing regularly. Even if all we're doing is opening our manuscript and looking at it and reminding ourselves that it is still there, so our subconscious can percolate on it. And what we want to focus on isn't so much the number of words that we write or how long we sit in our chair. We just want to create that habit of writing. So to create the habit, we need to set ourselves up for success by doing all those things that we've talked about above. And then we want to remove as much friction to the writing as possible. We want to make sure that it's easy to get to your writing gear, to get to your writing space. If you've got to get your sensory cues up and running, get your brain primed so that your body knows, your brain knows this is time to write. So then I want you to set up a ridiculously small goal. Every Monday through Friday, I'm going to open my laptop and write one paragraph on my WIP, my work in progress. Or every day, I'm going to open my laptop and look at my manuscript for 5 minutes. That's it. It's so simple. There's two schools of thought on what comes after you have accomplished your goal. One says you need to stop and walk away and say, that's it. Your brain, you accomplished the goal. It's very happy that you accomplished the goal and you can walk away. Another says it's fine to keep going if you want to. Personally, I tend to fall in that latter camp. I really don't know what the evidence is for that one way or the other. But the point is that even if you have a day where everything sort of crashes around you, your goal should be so small that you could do it no matter what. You can plunk out a crappy paragraph. You can look at your manuscript for 5 minutes, however it might go for you. Because what we're doing really is establishing the habit. We're not necessarily trying to make the progress on our manuscript right now. The goal is to establish the habit. The habit is important because we don't want to rely on our willpower to keep us going. We want to have the habit of writing so it's a natural part of our routine. We don't have to remind ourselves to brush our teeth or drink coffee in the morning or tea. It's just part of our routine. We just do it. And so we want the writing to be the same way. Make it ridiculously small, something you can do every day, no matter what happens to you. So here are 2 other tricks to help you create your habit. Set your habit intention. And this is simply where you say, when are you going to perform your habit? So after I eat lunch, I'm going to write for 15 minutes. So be specific. If at all possible, make it a time you can keep no matter what. So most of us eat lunch every day. If you don't eat lunch every day, then that would be a bad thing to try to make your habit work around. Some people do much better in the morning. Some people do better in the evening. So pick a time that is going to help you be the most successful that you possibly can be. And related to that is habit stacking. Habits are more easily formed when they're attached to something you already are doing, an already existing habit. So if you have the habit of eating lunch, it's easier to tack writing onto the end of that. If you have the habit of drinking coffee in the morning, it could be easy to stack your habit onto that. So find an existing habit that will work for you to tack your new writing habit onto. Okay. The other thing that is very helpful in establishing a habit is writing sprints. You might have heard of these before. I host them every twice a week in my writing lab for my C4 members, which is my membership group. There's something about writing with other authors that helps keep you accountable. It's kind of like going to a workout class or walking with a friend. It's just so much more powerful when you do it with other people. But even if you can't write with other people, you can sprint yourself. You can set a timer for 25 minutes, eliminate your distractions, dive in and get going. Knowing that you only have to concentrate for a short period of time can be really helpful to keep your brain on track. If you want to take it up a notch, you can text somebody and say, I'm getting ready to do my writing sprint. And if you really want to be bold, text them when you've done it too. And tell them how many words you wrote. So speaking of word count, as I said before, it's not super important, especially at the beginning, to track word count, but you should track it. And the reason is over the long term, it will help you identify patterns when you are the most productive. It doesn't really matter how you track it. You can use a notebook, a spreadsheet, a calendar, whatever works for you. But write down how many words a session you are getting in, or if you're just brainstorming, or if you're editing, or if you're thinking, just so you can begin to see your own writing system and patterns. If you do not write, you need to put a no where you would normally put that word count. That is a little bit of negative reinforcement. And if you really are motivated by things like that, that will make you just want to put a few words down just so you don't have to put a no on your checklist. Not everybody's motivated by that, but if you are, that can be a great way to do it. Okay, so these are a lot of the great tips and tricks that I have found over the years that work really well to begin to set yourself up for success with your writing, so you can have a good, solid writing habit. So this is the foundation that we want to lay. We've got our system set up, our writing space ready to go, but then we run into, what do we write? How do we get started? I've had those exact same questions, and so have my writer friends. And so I came up with something called the Novel Blueprint. I released my first book, my very first book, called Coming Home, and that came out in November of 2016. Because I had 2 other books nearly finished, I was able to get them out relatively quickly as well. But then I got stuck. Those books had been workshopped, edited, critiqued, many years I had spent on these books. How could I make sure my next books were just as good? And how could I put books out faster? I didn't want to spend years writing every book. And I wanted to make sure that everything I'd learned about writing in all of those books went into my next book. For over 15 years, I've been working with writers of all skill levels, from beginners to best-selling to multi-published authors, as an editor and a book coach, helping them make their stories better. I had been seeing patterns and reoccurring things that were present in good writing and missing in beginning writing. Not only did I find some of the same pitfalls, I found that writers got bogged down in the creation of the novel itself. There are a lot of books on the individual aspects of writing, but how do you take that and translate that to your own work? How do you know if you're applying it correctly? Creating a novel is a huge undertaking. How do you juggle the forest and the trees? So one day I finally took a huge roll of butcher paper and I rolled it across my dining room table, and I pulled out all my writing books, and I started putting out everything someone would need to know about writing a novel. And it took me about a week. But what I came up with was what I ended up calling the Novel Blueprint. And I end up sharing that with my writer friends. And this was really an eye-opening moment for me, because it wasn't so much that it was beneficial to me, other people found it useful as well. So I was on a video chat with other authors, all of whom were best-selling authors. And I really wasn't sure what they would think of this, but they loved it. They had these aha moments, and I need to go back and fix that. And this inspires me to work on my next book. So even though they had written multiple books, this was still something they thought would be very beneficial to them and would help them. So now, after having shared this method with many writers at every writing skill level, what I've discovered is that the Novel Blueprint addresses these common problems. Each time I write a book, it feels like I'm starting from scratch. How do I do that without reinventing the wheel every time? There are so many pieces to juggle. Where do I even begin? I can't finish a book. I get partway through and I get stuck. How do I write faster and better? There's a lot to remember about writing a book. How do I make sure I'm hitting all the important things? And how do I write a book that readers rave about and tell their friends to buy? So in the novel writing world, it's not unusual to be asked, are you a pantser or a plotter? In other words, do you plot your book out with a detailed plan, or do you write by the seat of your pants, known as a pantser or a discovery writer? The Novel Blueprint eliminates the dichotomy in the writing world between pantsing and plotting. So each has its pros and cons. With pantsing, you discover the book as you write it. You harness the fun of creativity, but it keeps the writing at the trees level. The writer doesn't have a clear picture of where the book is going, or even who the characters are before starting the book or beginning to write. It often can involve a lot of rewriting and tossing out part of a book and starting over because the plot's not strong enough to sustain a whole book, or the author has written themselves into a corner. Can you imagine writing a whole novel just to have to scratch it and start over? Jocelyn Jackson, who's one of my favorite authors, she had to do that. She wrote a whole novel that just didn't work. With plotting, you get a good overview of the whole book and its arcs because you lay out each scene, often in intricate detail. And this is a much more forest level view. But it often removes the joy of the creative process. Many writers would rather poke their eyes out than plot out their whole book in advance. And I know some of those authors are in this audience right now because I know who you are. So I coined the term blueprinting. Just as you would not build a house without a detailed set of blueprints, you shouldn't write a novel without one either. The novel blueprint gives you all the important elements, such as the foundation, the walls, the windows, but it leaves all the fun creative parts intact too, much like furnishing a room and picking out paint colors. If you started building a house like a pantser, you would build the living room and decorate it before moving on to decide what other rooms you might need in the house. But what if you forgot to include a window or a hallway? So now you've got to demo this beautifully painted wall. Ouch, that's much like having to delete a beautiful scene that just doesn't fit with your overall story. If, on the other hand, you built a house like a plotter, you'd have all the furniture arrangement laid out and all the finishes and paint colors picked before you even broke ground, which actually can make the process take longer and can rigidly confine you to a schedule when the unexpected happens. So today we're going to talk about how the novel blueprint method gives you all the major components you need to construct your novel while still allowing for the element of surprise and the joy of creativity. It helps you write faster because you won't have to be rewriting and deleting. And when you sit down to write, you'll know what you're going to write. And it'll help you write a better book, rich with characters who are believable and story arcs that are compelling. And it gives you a method that you can use on book after book, so you know exactly what you need to do each time you sit down to write. The foundational truth about all books is that it is really all about emotions. The best books are created when the reader identifies emotionally with the hero and takes the emotional roller coaster ride with him. And those emotions are best created by compelling characters. Think about some of your favorite books. What's the first thing you think of? The message, the theme? No, you probably remember how that book made you feel and the characters, maybe the journey that they went on. So we want to learn how to create that kind of story, the story that sticks with readers long after they've closed the book. And so let's dig a little bit deeper and figure out why that kind of story works. Our brains are wired for story. The brain has two goals: to survive and to thrive, and it's constantly looking for information on how to do both of those things. And it does that through story by casting itself as the protagonist, the main character in the story. So when it reads a story, the brain will treat itself like it's in the story. So the stories have a structure that the brain is intrinsically looking for. And it's something like this. The main character has a past with a wound and a lie that stems from that wound. Until the inciting incident, which means she can no longer operate in the world the way she has been, something has changed. She's been doing just fine. She thinks she's just fine. But she also wants something external and tangible, a story goal. But what she wants deep down inside is that magic elixir that will heal her wound. And that's her internal goal. And she might not even really totally be aware of that yet. Because we as humans are resistant to change, she will try to reach for her story goal while protecting her wound. But there are difficulties because the brain does not give credit to an easy victory. We know life is hard and things are challenging. And so those difficulties force her to deal with her wound. But generally, she's just going to make herself worse off because as humans, we tend to do that. So until her wound is exposed and the lie seems real and all seems lost, this is our black moment. It's here that she realizes what she needs to do to find healing. She's become stronger and learned more through all of those difficulties that have brought her to this point. And that leads her to her epiphany. The lie is exposed for what it is. She does the thing that she needs to do, which she can now do, but she could not do at the beginning, which leads to a satisfying conclusion. And I bet you can find almost every story that you know will fit into that structure. So that tells us there's a few things we need to remember. These are key story points. Everything in the story must be there for a reason. The brain is looking for answers. So it's going to assume if it's in the story, it's part of the answer. It's got to be. Everything in the story must tie itself to the wound in some way. The wound is the problem that the brain is looking for a solution to. And anything else really isn't relevant. And everything must be resolved in a reasonable way. The brain wants the story to make sense so it can be replicated. So if you think about your favorite books, as we talked about earlier, particularly if they're the same genre that you're writing for in your current WIP, how do those books make you feel? What emotions do readers in your genre expect to feel? We need to have an idea of what our emotions our readers should be feeling in our genre, so we can craft that story to bring those emotions out. We know romance novels need to take us on that lovely roller coaster of falling in love and the potential of a relationship. We know a thriller book is going to have that heart-pounding, take us on a life-altering adventure that could be, change the whole world. And a mystery is going to make us ask a lot of questions. So every genre is going to have a different emotion associated with it, and we need to make sure that we are addressing that appropriately in our stories. So that is the basic of where the novel blueprint came from. I love that it's customizable to you and your story. I've used it in a slightly different way for every book that I've written, but it definitely saves me time from wandering around a rabbit trail, because the questions it helps me think about are relevant to the key parts of my story. And it helps me make the most efficient use of my writing time. Because let's face it, none of us have unlimited time to write. I wish we did, but most of us just do not. We have to get our writing in pieces here and there. I've shared part of the novel blueprint at various conferences, and a few people have gone through a stripped down version of this course. But this is the first time I'm going to offer the whole thing, teach it from beginning to end. And so if you choose to join me, we're going to spend 12 weeks covering all the major points that you need to create compelling characters and page-turning plots, such as theme. Let's see, do I have it here? Oh, okay. It just jumped somewhere to me. All right. So of course, the compelling characters. This is the reason readers read stories. They want characters that they can relate to, that they can follow, that they can be with for the whole of your story. Page-turning plots. Even if you're writing just a straight romance and you wouldn't think that that needs to be a page turner, it does. You don't ever want to give your reader an excuse to put your book down. If there's any sort of slow part, or often what I hear from writers when I'm reading their manuscripts, they'll say it gets better later on, but your reader might not give you that chance. They have so many opportunities for other forms of entertainment. There's, Netflix and Hulu and Apple Plus and whatever's on your phone, right? All the different games, and even Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. All of those things are competing for your attention, your reader's attention. And so you have to give them a plot that keeps them turning pages, keeps them asking what's happening next. I can't imagine what's going to happen next. I can't stop reading because I have to figure out what happens next. Theme is sometimes taught in a way that makes people want to shy away from it because it sounds like it would be very preachy. But theme is actually just the reason why you're writing the book. What is the lesson learned? What is the way of life that your characters are advocating for? And so we'll talk about how you put that through in your book in the most compelling way, so readers leave your book feeling it's very much tied into the emotion. So they leave feeling that there was a satisfying ending to the story. We're going to talk about using backstory correctly. In the writing world, depending on how long you've been in it, you will hear people say, never use backstory, or never use backstory in the first 50 pages. And yet we are all creatures of our past. Who we are today is a result of everything that's happened to us up until this moment. And our characters are no different. So how do we use backstory in a way that is compelling, that makes us more attached to our characters, makes readers more attached to them, and doesn't bore them? We definitely do not want info dumps, right? Story world. A huge part of why people read books is to escape. And certainly there's plenty of things in this world to escape right now. And so we want to talk about how do we create a world that is rich, that makes a lot of sense, even if it's just our regular kind of contemporary world. And you're not writing a sci-fi or fantasy where you're introducing your readers to a whole other world. But we're going to talk about the world that you create for your characters to play in, and how that is going to undergird everything else that you write in that story. We're going to talk about a plot structure that works. What are the necessary elements of plot? How does the plot help keep your reader turning pages? What are the different tips and techniques that you need to keep that plot functioning properly? There's a lot of people talk about the saggy middle or plot holes. You might have heard those terms. We're going to make sure that we do not have any of those things in our books, and we'll talk about how to make sure that that doesn't happen. And just like in real life, our characters need to have goals. Unfortunately, they will have conflict because that is what makes life interesting. The brain actually is wanting to know how to overcome the conflict that we all experience in life, and it's looking for that in the book. So we have to have that for our characters. And we have to have appropriate motivation. We need to know why they're doing what they're doing. What are their stakes? What are they hoping to get out of it? So we'll talk about how to create all of that for your characters. Scene structure. I get asked a lot, how long should a scene be? How long should a chapter be? What's the difference between a scene and a chapter? How many chapters should be in a book? And there's a lot of various answers to that. But the bottom line is the scene itself needs to do everything that it needs to do. So the scene should be as long as it needs to be to accomplish all the things it should accomplish. And so we're going to talk about the scene structure, what needs to happen in a scene so it can behave appropriately, so it can take your characters from one point to a different point and take your readers on that journey. And so they cannot help but ask, what is going to happen next? Stimulus response. This is something that I have talked to a few people about, but I've never gotten to really teach on this. The only way you've ever heard about this is if I have been your private coach. And that's because this is the nitty-gritty part of the scene. This is a character does something and somebody responds. And we do this every day, 1,000 times in our actual lives. But in books, it gets screwed up all the time. And it is the fastest way to pull your reader right out of your scene and not make them feel like they're actually living it. So we will talk about that. I'm very excited about that piece. Dialogue. Again, something that I don't get to teach on too often because it can be very difficult to get into and has a lot of components to it. But dialogue is some of the most powerful tools and techniques you can use in your book. And it is done incorrectly so often. And yet a lot of it is a very simple fix once you know how to do it correctly. Right along with dialogue goes action beats. This goes beyond he said, she said. I have noticed with the advent of audiobooks being so popular now, if you read an audiobook, especially an older one, you'll have the character do the voice and then they'll say he said, and then they'll do her voice and then she said. And the saids really jump out at you because it pulls you out of the story. I just heard him say it. Nobody needs to tell me that he just said it, right? But many books have that over and over where it gets to be really repetitious and it doesn't add anything other than telling us, maybe differentiating who is speaking. There's so much more we can add to that. There's so much more body language and behavior and story world and setting and things that we can bring in to make everything, the dialogue between your characters, so much richer than just he said, she said. Subtexting, this again goes along with it. How many times have you had a conversation with somebody and you know they do not mean what those words that just came out of their mouth, they do not mean them. They mean exactly the opposite because of their body language, because of other things going on in the situation. And so you will learn how to put that on the page and have those emotionally rich scenes where your reader's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that just happened. Because they know what's actually going on. They know he's lying through his teeth because of his behavior. And so we want to have those kinds of emotional reactions with your characters. Internal monologue. This is another thing where it often gets a bad rap. You don't want to hear characters' thoughts. They shouldn't be rambling on and on and on, right? But a huge part of the brain science is that the brain wants to see, how do we solve a problem? How is your character figuring this out? And so they want to be in on it. Let me see you figuring out this problem. Now, like with anything, you can go too far and you can make it ridiculous, and we don't want to do that. So we want to learn how to use it appropriately. But interior monologue is one of those things that will really bond your reader to your character. So you want to learn to do it properly. And also, not finally, but finally on this list, is deep POV. This is deep point of view. And this is probably another thing that people really struggle with. And this is a direct result of the fact that we watch so much TV and so many movies that are very visual mediums. Because the disadvantage TV and movie has is they don't have interior monologue. They cannot be in the characters' heads. And so the directors have to show facial expressions and body language to try to convey that emotion. Well, that's fine for TV, but if you are kind of hopping around in a book showing us everybody's facial expressions, including the character that you're in, who doesn't necessarily know his own facial expression, we don't really get to have that deep sense of living within the brain and the skin and the eyes of the main character. And that's the experience that we want to have. So that's just a top high-level overview of some of the things that we'll cover in the Novel Blueprint course. I have the link there at the bottom of the screen, tandemservices.teachable.com/p/the Novel Blueprint Signature Course. If you literally just go to the first part, the tandemservices.teachable.com, you'll see it listed on there. Okay, so what does this course, what is the structure of it? What is it going to look like? It's going to be 12 weeks of almost all new content, certainly rearranged in ways that have never been presented before. We will have weekly Q&A sessions. This is something that I think is really key when you're going through, is to find an opportunity to be able to ask questions. This is what I tried. Is this working? Am I applying this right? I have a question I don't quite understand. And so I wanted to be able to offer you a weekly opportunity to come in and ask those questions. And yes, it'll be recorded if you can't make it, and then you have access to the recording. You can send in your questions ahead of time. But having that live component, I think, is super key for making sure you understand what you're learning. The other thing that I think is super key, and the number of people on the call can testify to, is our private community group. We have a great group on Circle. It's not on Facebook, it's on Circle SO, and it's our own group. And we are able to go in there and share about our struggles, ask other people questions. How do you deal with this? I'm in there. We have a lot of fun in there. We joke around a lot, but we have a really great time in there. And that definitely is a key aspect of being on this writer journey. I have writer friends that I have been friends with for 17 years virtually. We originally met online and then maybe in person at some conferences, but having other people go on that writing journey with you is just huge for helping you stay with it. And having people that can brainstorm when you're stuck or who understand your frustrations, there's nothing like it. And so having that group component is very, very important to me. And that's why I wanted to make it a part of this book. Now, I don't expect you to finish or write a novel in 12 weeks. Not at all. Somebody might. I mean, that would be fantastic if you did. But the whole goal is to have those foundational pieces. You'll get your questions answered. You'll have your own blueprint. You'll have a good way of moving forward, and then you can go back over and over again. You'll have access to the course for as long as it is a course. You'll have access to it to be able to go back to, you might want to rewatch, and you will definitely not get it all in one pass. There's just a lot of information there, but you will definitely have the opportunity to build your own personalized system for success, your own blueprint that you can use going forward. And I've broken it down. This price, because this is a beta version, as I've said, this is the first time I've really presented all this material. I am going to rely on your feedback to make adjustments to the course as we go through it. And out of appreciation for that, I have made it a really great price of $667 or 4 payments of $192, and it will not ever be offered at that price again. So that's part of the advantage of being part of the beta group. There are people who have done parts of the novel blueprint and parts of the courses, and so in some of their words, I just thought I would share with you people who have been through it so you can see their own reaction to it. USA Today bestselling author Liz Talzma, who also happens to be a wonderful friend of mine, one of those writers I have been on the journey with, she was one of the first people I introduced the novel blueprint to, and she is a complete pantser. And she says here, the novel blueprint has revolutionized how I write my stories. It provides great structure, helps me to get to know my characters better, and keeps my writing on track. From novice to professional, everyone can benefit from it. And for Liz, this has cut her writing time in half, her ability to put out novels. And she is a traditionally published author with contracts, and she has deadlines that she has to make. And this has been a great tool for her. And I've just been very thrilled to be able to share it with her. Jenny Carey, who's actually in our chat today, she is also a pantser and one of the people I've been on the writing journey with for a long time. And she will say, you know, before she had tried using any piece of the novel blueprint, she could plan on close to a year or more in the initial writing process. Jenny could put in there how many books she's written in the last couple of years. It's a lot more than one novel a year now. She, as a confirmed pantser, she never knew the twists and turns in the story, only the beginning, the big crisis, and the end. But when she tried parts of the nugget, crafted her 4th novel, a 95,000 word story, in 10 weeks. I was shocked, enough so that I was all in and used the entire blueprint for my next 2 books, not only writing them in record time, but enjoying the fun of exploration while the bumper guards of the blueprint added and kept me from running off unneeded scenes and elements. I love how it guides without removing the inspiration moments. I found my work has gained added depth. I will not write another book without Jennifer Crosswhite's novel blueprint. I highly recommend it. So she's written a lot more books since then. So that's been really, really fun to see. And she writes faster than I do now, which is fantastic. I love it. And then Zan Bernard, who's one of our wonderful community members, and she says, I'm currently writing my first novel, and I thought I would just be able to sit down and the words and plot would flow. I found this wasn't the case. Who knew? Last year, I met Jennifer via Paper Raven Books and have since joined her Tandem Services Craft Career Commerce community that we've talked about. Jennifer's blueprint method training and her book, Eat the Elephant, How to Write and Finish Your Book One Bite at a Time, have been invaluable to me. Using her blueprint method has taught me what I need to write captivating fiction novels. I know I wouldn't be where I am in my writing without Jennifer's wisdom and training. Thank you, Jennifer. And Zan is a wonderful member of our community, and she lives in Spain. So we truly do have people here from all around the world. And I love that. I love that we have the ability to do that. But right now it's like 2 o'clock in the morning in Spain. So she's not actually here. There are some wonderful bonuses that I wanted to give people for joining and being part of this beta version process. Like I said, there's a special price that will definitely go up next year. But there's other bonuses that I wanted to give you as well, because as we know, writing the book is just the first step. It's a huge step. You can't go any farther without it, but there are other steps to see your book come to life on a bookshelf. And those are some of the things that I address in these extra bonuses. So the self-editing bonus course, which is an editing checklist, which is all the things you need to do to polish your manuscript before sending it off to an editor. Different levels of editing. When you go to an editor, you should be able to tell them what it is you need and converse with them intelligently about that. So to educate yourself on the different levels of editing and what that might look like. Make sure that you can get exactly what it is that you need. How to write a series. A series is a great way to build a fan base. What are the best practices and tips for doing that well? That's in this extra bonus. A release checklist. Once you've written the book, now it's time to send it out in the world. What do you need to know to do that? This is a checklist that will walk you through it. The indie publishing process and timeline. If you've decided to self-publish your work, it can seem overwhelming. It really, truly can be like drinking out of a fire hose. And this resource will walk you through the process with all the timelines so you'll know exactly what you need to be doing and when. A book promotion secret stash, all of the places you want to make sure your book is listed when it releases. And then Scrivener templates. We are big fans of Scrivener here, and so I have created templates using the novel blueprint for both the Mac and PC versions of Scrivener, and that's included in this bonus. There's a video walkthrough of using BookFunnel. BookFunnel is a wonderful tool for book promotion and newsletter swaps with other authors, and we show you how to do that. And last but definitely not least is a video walkthrough of uploading your book to Amazon's KDP. It can seem intimidating, but we will walk through it step by step in this video. So you will have all the tools you need to write and publish your book. Now there's one more thing for being on this call. If you sign up within the next 24 hours, this will expire at 6 p.m. tomorrow. You get a free 25-minute strategy session with me. And it doesn't seem like 25 minutes would be enough, but it's amazing the things we can cover because I know how to ask you some really specific questions to narrow down. Talking about your books, what's holding you up. We'll craft a personal plan for you. Normally I charge almost $300 for that call, but I'm adding it in here as a special fast acting bonus. Okay, I love this quote by Dorothy Parker. I think it might become one of my favorite ones. Creativity is a wild mind and a disciplined eye, and we really want to bring that to life with allowing all our wild mind to run and be creative and have fun, but then we want to bring it in with some discipline so we can actually produce our books. So our goal is to help you make your writing dreams come true through the Novel Blueprint signature course. So we've got a little bit of time left, just about 2 minutes. Oh, everybody all the comments just disappeared. Well, that's fun. I will see if I can see the comments. We will see if it will let me see any comments. We'll see if I can figure out how to do that. I don't know if I can or not. Maybe I can. No, maybe I can't. Let's see. I love technology. It's so much fun. But I usually do a lot of recorded videos or Zoom. And no, this is not going to let me do this. Okay, well, I cannot see your comments. They were all there a minute ago. And I thought, oh, that's cool. I'll just scroll back through them and answer any comments that need to be answered. But I can apparently not see them. So that is fun. Why are these disappearing? I wonder if it hits a certain limit or not. Okay, let me see if it will show me things. Oh, there we go. Okay, here we go. I can see a little something here. It looks like the course is asynchronous except for the Q&A. That's correct. So the Q&A will be Monday nights at 5 p.m. I'm also on the West Coast, so it's Pacific time. And then So yes, the course content will be dripped out. So every week you'll get new content, so it's not overwhelming. And there'll be newsletters and discussion in our circle group where we can continue to make sure that we're all talking about this week's topic. But certainly if you have other things, you can bring that in there. And then, yes, if you decide after the course that you want to move into C4 to have some of the extra benefits of that, you can do that. The circle, the circle group is, I can hear myself twice. I don't want to hear myself twice. So yeah, circle is just a place where it's hosted. There is a circle group that is particular to our course folks. And then there's some additional benefits that you get access to other libraries and other additional monthly Q&As and things that come through the C4 group. Richard is very kind and saying, I can see all your comments now. They all came back. That his first call with me is one of the happiest memories of his writing life. I love that, Richard. Richard is a fantastic encourager, and we are so thrilled to have him in the group. The course starts March 21st. That's right. I did not mention that. It starts March 21st. And so, yes, the circle membership is part of this. You'll have access to that. The C4 does also use circle, but we have many other things that we do generally on Zoom instead. So Jenny did put in her numbers. So she's up to 13 published books and 15 completed manuscripts. I told you she's gonna pass me. She's gonna pass me this year. So yeah, and I think Beth, people were answering your questions in the group, which is what's so fantastic about this group. You guys are wonderful. And Paula makes a really good point too. If you're not ready to make this kind of commitment, the C4 membership group is a great place to start, $37 a month. And you do get a sampling of that. We have a monthly Q&A in there and community and our writing sprints. So you don't get necessarily the training in the novel blueprint, but you definitely get to have the ability to ask some questions and to be in community with other authors. Richard did also make a good point that while it's called the novel blueprint, it does work for nonfiction because the brain is wired for story. And so all of these techniques do get adapted for nonfiction writers as well. So I'm just scrolling through here really quick. I don't want to keep you guys over. It's right at the top of the hour. So I want to see if there's anything in here that I didn't answer. If you would like to have a question that I did not answer, I'm going to put my email right here. It's just jennifer@tandemservicesinc.com. You can shoot me an email. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about this and anything that you need to know that we did not cover during this time. Thank you guys so much. Oh, I see what I did. Okay, cool. Thank you guys so much for putting up with some of the crazy technology and for showing up and being supportive and answering questions and showing some interest. And I hope that I will see you all on the 21st, starting with our first Q&A, and that you will join the group and really understand and learn all the wonderful things that we all experience together. So have a good rest of your evening. And let's see, Beth, you were asking the name of the book. It's Eat the Elephant, How to Write and Finish Your, I'm not going to get it all typed in time, Eat the Elephant. How to Write and Finish Your Novel One Bite at a Time. You can get it anywhere books are sold. So, all right. Oh, Mr. Hunter joined us. Awesome. Good to know. Mr. Hunter is also an author and a colleague. So, an amazing marketing person. Have a wonderful evening, you all. Have a great weekend. So great to see you all here, and we will talk soon. All right. Bye-bye.